Today is the 7th of May, and continuing our interviews of ex-students for the centenary of Marist College, Kogarah. Today I'd like to welcome Dr. John Best. Dr. John completed his schooling here at Kogarah in 1979, and we'll go through a few questions, John.
Welcome, John.
Welcome, John.
Thanks, Steve. It's good to be here. It's an exciting year for the school.
John, if we can just start with your time before you come to Marist College, Kogarah. You're obviously a local if you did come to this school, but if you can just tell us maybe your primary school and some of those experiences.
Well, my parents immigrated from Egypt. I was born there, so in 1965 we came to Australia. We lived in Revesby. I did primary school at a Catholic school in Revesby called St Luke's, then started early high school at De La Salle, Revesby, and then we moved to Beverly Hills where I went to Marist Brothers Penshurst for middle high school, and then a group of us came to Kogarah for 1978-79, so 5th and 6th form we called it then.
Right, that still goes on today. The boys go to Penshurst till year 10 and
yes.
Then a lot of them come here. So you arrived at Kogarah in year 11. Just a few things about your time here, some major experiences, some teachers that maybe had an impact on you.
Oh, my time here was terrific. It was all good. When I look back, and it has been a time of reflection lately and still have contact with guys in my year, what I enjoyed most of all was camaraderie. I don't remember ever not wanting to come to school in those last 2 years, which I think is a good indicator of how enjoyable it is. And I think for me, because I enjoyed sport, the sports program, and particularly having a man like Mr. Ken Boothroyd there, he made a difference, and I've actually learnt things from him which I've carried into my professional life now.
You're about the 5th ex-student who's mentioned Kenny Boothroyd.
Yeah. Subsequent to that, I had Max Redmayne for maths. He was a terrific guy, he was friendly, and I guess he showed me how you can have that balance of teaching and discipline and still gain the respect of students. And we had, I think we had a year where we had good guys in the year. We had guys that contributed at different levels. I remember our formal, for example, being a lot of fun, no real trouble. I remember some fights with other schools where guys would support each other, down on the flat, down the bottom there.
Kogarah High, maybe?
Kogarah High, and I think James Cook. Not that I'm condoning that, of course, for the students here, but just the level of support that was there, and also being from an immigrant family, and in that era, through the 60s and 70s, people were labelled as wogs and so on. Well, we had that ethnic diversity in this school, which I know still exists,
Yes.
and I think that adds to the flavour of the school in a positive way.
Excellent. Now you've kicked on. You've done a lot with medicine since, but any mischief at school? I can't really imagine it, but
nothing that I got caught with. No, look, I didn't actually. I mean, we have teenage children ourselves, and they don't cause trouble, and we have friends with teenagers, and you hear different things. And I have a lot of teenagers as patients in my work as a doctor. But there's no question you have points where you make decisions. And when we looked at the decision points, whether you'd cross the line to break law or harm public property, etc., you just tried to avoid that. And I think part of the ease of that was the fact that the guys around you also were probably in some ways mature enough to know what was fun and what was inappropriate. So not a lot of mischief. I didn't see the point of it, actually.
Sounds like good advice, though, knowing where that line is, having a bit of fun, but not.
Well, you need friends to help you. I think if you're a bit unhappy in your own personal or home life, it's a lot easier to go off the rails in those other areas.
True. All right, you left the school. I'm aware that you studied medicine at Newcastle University. You're also involved in the Wallabies, and I'm sure there's a lot of things between there that I'm not aware of. Can you just fill us in on what's been happening since school?
Well, yeah, medicine was a dream. I wasn't a brilliant student, and in our year there were brilliant students. Peter McMillan, for example, he did medicine here in Sydney, and is on the north coast of New South Wales in general practice. But I was basically the last one in New South Wales to get into medicine. I got accepted at Newcastle Uni, and the reason I got in there was they had a different selection policy, so you had to get a minimum HSC, then do some aptitude tests and then get interviewed. But I think looking back, the nature of the school helped me in that medical course, because the course at Newcastle involved a lot of group learning as opposed to just sitting in lecture theatres. And my dream was to do sport and medicine, which didn't exist in the early 80s. And I just love sport and my experiences here. So as it turned out, I was able to get into that. So I'm now what's called a sports physician, so I'm a specialist in sports medicine. And that has opened other doors where I've worked with professional sports teams, both here and abroad, and have enjoyed a practice that also is involved in prescribing exercise for people with injury or diseases that exercise could help, and also promoting healthy lifestyle.
Thanks, John. Just the final question. In my dealings with you, I'm aware of how important your faith is to you. If I can just ask if that come from school or your primary school, or it's something that was the basis of and you built on later?
It's probably for me the most important thing in my life, and it directs how I think and hopefully how I act, and how we hold our and run our home. Looking back at school, I think I had an awareness that a God existed, and coming through, I guess, a Catholic education, certainly in my primary years, my view of God was he was probably a severe judge. So I had what you would call a fear of God, and always, I guess, trying to do the right thing. But through a series of circumstances, when I was 24, the Bible was explained to me as an adult in ways that made more sense. And at that time, I think, is when I became a Christian. And that is a more personal, I guess, relationship with God as opposed to a philosophical one. And that's been exciting because it helps live well in terms of how I treat people, how I work. It challenges me to live a bit differently. It corrects me when I do the wrong thing, and it gives me a hope for the future. And I think a lot of those seeds were sown all through school.
Right, thanks, John. Just to give you the opportunity, any final words, or are you happy with that?
Well, I'm not quite sure who the audience will be, but school lessons lead on to life lessons, and if you're going to really enjoy school, you need to contribute. You need to not make excuses and not contribute. You need to contribute. And you also need to support your teachers, and this may sound very old-fashioned, but it's true, because teaching is difficult. A lot of teachers need to parent and teach, and that's hard. But teachers are there not because of good incomes, but of a desire to help people learn and grow. So for those who are students and parents, I encourage good input and good support of the schools you're in.
Dr. John Best, thanks for your time.
Thank you.